I know, I'm like, I might, if I manage to get to actually just gonna have it, I'm sure it's gonna be some that. Oh, yeah, like, actually, we made it in the middle too. Oh, it's been like, that's how we see it. And then I guess,
Okay, sounds great. Thank you so much for paying attention. And I hope you had a good chat and got the new tea going on campus for you. My name is Farzan Kapanta. Not officially a doctor yet, but I'm going to graduate in a month, so just feel free to call me Farzan even after getting the PhD. Just feel free to call me Farzan even after, it doesn't really matter. We're going to go through the architecture and environment together. Super nice course. I have been teaching this course for the past 3 years, 3 years and a half. And the students almost always get an A+ in the course, right? So easy course, easy A+, easy for you to make you have higher chances for those scholarships that you're going to apply for, right? That's the number one thing. Architecture and environment is something that technically covers a broad spectrum of topics throughout the course, right? And you're going to learn a lot of new things. And then we'll talk about it in a minute, but then technically you have 3 assignments, 1 final project, and the exam. The lectures are about 13 lectures. I wrote 12 plus 1 because in 12 of them, you're going to learn new things. But in the last one, you're going to have a course review, which is technically talking about the exam for you and how the exam is going to be, right? That's what the last session is going to be about. You can see here, you learn a lot of things. You technically learn about the entire building systems. You learn about the performance of a building in terms of energy. You learn about LCA, occupant comfort, and then all the way to the urban designing and life cycle assessment in more detail in the final lectures. A few things before we start. If you ever have a question or if you just want to get in touch with me to ask me anything, try to get in touch 72 hours before any deadline that you might have, because I'm an outdoors person, so I normally go hiking or camping, and I sometimes don't have access to the internet. So if you send it 72 hours, I guarantee that I can get back to you, right? I'm also always on my phone, so if you send me an email, I can just respond to you probably very quickly, unless I don't have internet access, right? That's the number one thing. We have the assignments and the final project, which are all going to be graded by the TAs. The 2 TAs that we have, I think I have the contact information on the next page. You're going to meet them for your tutorials, which is technically A1E. And you can contact them for your assignments. If you have any questions regarding the assignment or grading. If they can't answer your question, they will probably forward your email to me, and then you'll be CC'd, and then we'll go from there together. Right? For assignments, there are deadlines in the course. For example, all of them are midnight. I said all of them to midnight, right? But sometimes the internet doesn't work, or you're just not feeling well, or something is wrong. So there's a 24-hour grace period. I'm going to communicate it very clearly to the TAs as well. The 24-hour grace period, if anything goes wrong and you submit late, up to 24 hours after the due date, you're not losing any money, right? And let me tell you, as a TA, I was always chilling grading people. So this course is going to be one of the chillest things as long as you follow the steps and you make sure that you do not postpone it to the last minute. Okay, that's very important. Do not postpone the assignments to the very last minute. Aside from that, the TAs are there to help you to make sure that you get A pluses. I am here to make sure that you're doing great. And everybody is technically here to make sure that you are going to have the success that you want in this course. And the last one, it might be something new, but if somebody asks a question or answers a question correctly in the course, we are going to knock on the table for them, right? This is what we call it, the class culture, right? So let's practice it together for a second and knock on the table for yourself, right? Hey, there we go. Everybody knows how to do it. Perfect. So that was your part of the class culture. We're going to have that if anybody comes up with a question. Answers, wrong or right, really doesn't matter. All that matters is that you stay active in the classroom, right? And interact with me, right? I don't want to lose your attention in the middle of the course, right? That's very important. And these are the contact information. I technically have 2 email addresses because I am involved with some of the university stuff going on. I can give you a fun fact about this room, actually. The first one or the second email, to any of those 2, you send an email, I'm going to receive it, right? The second 2 emails are Arya, he is your TA, and Ali, he is your TA too. Those people are going to be contacted if you have a question about the assignment or grading or anything in general, right? And then you can come you feel free to contact me. There's no rush or anything, but because just they're grading the assignment and they're teaching the tutorials, it's easier for you to contact them first, right? Any questions so far? Okay. So fun fact about the room, when the Senate of the university was renovated, this room was actually where the committee meetings or the Senate meetings were being held, right? So that's fun fact. Everybody was in this room, they had big cameras, everybody was supposed to introduce themselves when they were talking and stuff. For the final project of the course in the past 2 years or 3 years, we had 2 different situations. One of the final projects was that you were supposed to design 3 metrics to evaluate building performance. Sounds scary, but it's not, believe me, we are there to help you and you make sure that we get everything done right step by step. And the other project was like designing a school or designing a building in very like general layout for different clients, right? We have those 2, but I really like both of them, and we are probably going to do something similar this year as well. But there's something new that I need to get your feedback on. This year, every time we submitted those projects, let's say, they were just going to be submitted on the Brightspace, you get a grade for them, and that's it, right? There's no like external benefit to you guys, right? Because it's just another assignment submitted through the course, and that's it, right? This year, we have something called Creation Suites or Creation Rooms as part of the TLS. It's actually a podcast room where people can sit down and record themselves, right? And all of them have 3 chairs. That's so far. And we have the TLS support to do this fully. They will guide you through it. They will teach you the stuff that you need, and then you need a little bit of intuition to get things done, right? What I want to get your opinion on is this. I have the idea of Vodcast for those final projects that you're going to submit, right? And because it is something new, the grading is going to be very basic. It's going to be based on the scientific knowledge of the course. It does of like how many covers topic throughout those Vodcasts. There is nothing like you're not going to be graded based on your performance or how you record it or how good like the visuals are. It really doesn't matter. It's just that the things that you present are the scientific stuff based on the course in those Vodcasts, right? How does everybody feel about doing Vodcast for the final project or as part of the final project? Is it something that somebody has a strong objection to? You got to announce it now, or you cannot announce it anymore after this time is gone. Sorry, I don't know the exact wording that they use for it. Pardon language. English is not my native language.
Would this be like individual or like?
No, this is a group of 3 people.
Okay.
It's a group project. Okay, here's a fun fact for you, but don't bring it up later on. I was trying to get rid of your final exam and we just do a final project and then we get it done. But after consultation with the chair, we had to take back the final examination marks up to 50%. So sorry about that. That's part of the engineering requirements. If we don't do this, the PEO is not going to give your licenses. So yeah, you want the license, right? You want the license, not the grade. So that's what I'll say. But here's something else that I was like, okay, I cannot get rid of the final examinations for you, but I can do something more fun. So we're going to make it a competition, right? You're going to get your marks, you're going to get your grades, doesn't matter, easy grading, just on the scientific facts. That's it, right? But the competition, probably I'll put a commentary for it, is I'm trying to secure between 5K to 10K for you guys. And then each group that wins is going to receive $1,000. Sorry, 300 per person is not that much, but $1,000 per group is a cool idea, right? I'm trying to do that. As I mentioned there is no guarantee. Oh, yeah, there's no guarantee. I mentioned it there already. Because I contacted 3 different foundations, including PEO itself. PEO got back to me. They said, oh, the idea is cool. Send us the sponsorship package. So I sent them the sponsorship package. I can show you the package that I sent to them at the end of the course. But technically, the idea is this. If PEO supports us, the other 2 companies or foundations also support us, then technically each group is going to receive $1,000. So Don't bring it up, keep it a secret for the classroom. Well, I don't know if it's going to happen or not. Okay, so there is no guarantee that there will be a prize, but we're definitely going to post your broadcast on YouTube. So later on, you can just try to use those as something external to you. Now, if you ask me that, why is it important that we do this, right? Why is it important to do a podcast? You all know this guy, I forgot his name, the psychologist just gets on Instagram and talks about different things, and the scientific people are coming and they're like, oh, some of the things that he's saying are really outdated and nobody believes them anymore. But it's a social media age, guys. Everybody believes what they hear, right? So this is a practice of you being engineers and also people that can present themselves later on to get contracts. Right? Some of you might want to start a company. Some of you might have a startup idea. Some of you even want to just present yourself to a bigger company, right? This will be a practice for that. All right. So we're going to post them on YouTube. I hope we get the prizes. I'm really trying hard for it, and it's a lot of work. Believe me, on my end, it's a lot of work to just talk with those people and just get things secured for you. But I'm trying my best. And my own experience is that as part of my PhD studies and the research that I have done, I had a lot of TV and radio interviews. And let me tell you, this is the single most important thing, to put your name out there and people trust you and build that confidence that you need to run the stuff later on in your life. All right. So I assume there's no objection. Is everything cool with everybody? All right. So we're going to do the podcast confirmed. And that is perfect. I normally give everybody a 40-minute break or a 1 hour for the first time, then we go out for like 10 minutes, and there are like 40-minute breaks. So don't freak out. You're not going to just talk. But you'll have your own time to enjoy. And there's a coffee shop downstairs. That's it for now. But for today, we are going to talk about very general topics just so that you get a sense of what this course is about. Right? We're going to talk about the legal architecture, a lot of different environments. We're going to talk about the principles of this course and the skill sets that you're going to develop at the end. And starting with that, let's start. What's the built environment, guys? Yeah.
I assume it's like the architecture.
There's a knock on the table, guys. There's a knock on the table. But can you say the answer one more time loud?
The architecture.
See, you're learning. Great job, guys. Great job. Okay, the architecture. Other guesses? Like, there's not a single way to describe something. There's like millions of ways. Yes, please.
Infrastructure, anything that's built.
Yeah. Great job. Great job. Yes, we have another volunteer in front.
Oh, there was gonna be the same thing like roads, highways, but also I suppose like parks, because we have to change the environment.
That's a very good question. That's a very good answer. And a very good question later on for you. Yes.
Whether you change something that was like originally natural or something that you impact changes.
Yeah, perfect. Opposite of anything good, right? Anything, sorry, opposite of anything in nature. Any other guesses? Nobody? So yeah, technically, the built environment is anything built by us, right? And that's a good question. If other, well, maybe it's not the best way to put it, but like if other animals are also able to create things, right? It is, if they were having something, it would be part of the, it's still part of the nature for us, right? Although they can impact the nature. For example, beavers can impact the nature, right? But it's for them, it's not for us, right? So anything nature related is nature, anything built related is related to us, right? Anything that we technically interact with is part of our built environment. And what's a natural environment? And there's an answer there. There's a cheat code for you. Yes.
Spaces containing living and non-living things.
Smart. I like that. Knock on the table, guys. Knock on the table. Yes. Yeah. Except the built environment, right? Yeah. Knock on the table. Yeah, Discord ain't that hard, right? The answers are already provided. Any other people? Any other answers? Yeah, that's perfect. That's the answer, right? Anything that is not built by us is technically the natural environment. Now, here comes the question. What's permaculture? What is it? Does anyone have any idea? Can you guess what it might be? Yes.
Stuff that permitting changes the. Like some, something like landscaping.
Good guess, knock on the table. Any other guesses? Yes,
Environment that will remain the same, be permanent. Like,
No.
for example, land, farm.
knock on the table. Other guesses? Yes,
Human influenced agriculture?
knock on the table. Other guesses? Nobody? Okay, well. I love your answers, but they're not correct. Sorry about that. Oh, no, it's working. So technically, permaculture is a new concept that says everything that you build, it needs to be sustainable, right? It goes through a circle like this. There's a cycle, and everything you technically work with, you are going to put it and use it in the same cycle, right? It's just you're going through it, and everything is just being recreated, and everything is going on. If you are using something and there's a waste or there's a byproduct, the byproduct is going to be used for something else. Right? Any questions? That's technically permaculture, right? It's just like reuse everything. Technically, let us have no waste. Now, built versus natural, the divide, right? That's what I call it, the divide. What do you think about these two? One is Singapore, one is Hong Kong. Have you ever been to any of those? Anyone? Yeah, what was your experience?
Singapore, it has really nice urban planning, and I feel like they've really understood and maximized the space that they have there.
Yeah, knock on the table. Anyone else? We're having to these places?
I've been to Hong Kong. I just remember being a bit depressed because you would see like these luscious green mountains and then suddenly like the buildings don't blend in with the landscape. They just like jut out their high rises and they all look the same.
Good answer. Any other guesses? Okay, perfect. So we have somebody who experienced Singapore, right? And then we have somebody who experienced Hong Kong. One of them says the urban design is super perfect in Singapore, and the other person says, sorry, I didn't ask your name. I should have asked your names. What's your name?
Lillian.
Lillian, and what's your name?
Shannon.
Shanann? Okay. Lillian said Hong Kong is a little bit depressing because all those buildings are very tall and you're not getting enough daylight. So I really don't like it. I'm not probably going back, or I don't know, you might go back. I just made that up. But the other one is also having a nice urban design, right? And that is true. Technically, does anybody know what Singapore is labeled as? Like what's urban planning labeled as? Do you know yourself?
Contemplate its own country and city. Is that what you-
Yeah, but it's labeled as something. It's like it has an adjective to it. There's a name for it. Anyone? Yes. I love the answer, but no. Knock on the table. Anyone else? It's technically called. Oh, I forgot myself. No, it's called City in Paradise or something like that, or City of Gardens. Sorry, that is what it is. City of Gardens, right? There's so many green space around, right? People can use it. Now, my question for you, what do you think the interaction? I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Get into groups of 3 or 5 or whatever number you like. Okay, get into the groups of 3 or 5, and then discuss. What is the impact between the two, right? What's the interaction between the two? And you can move your tables if you want around because you have nice setting there, and you don't need to move your chairs back. You can just sit where you are. You can just sit in front of each other if you want to discuss it as a group. There's more group project coming up. So be quick, let's do it.
So I guess
Guys, question is not on the board, but question is how is the natural environment and the built environment interacting? Just to be clear. Yeah, question.
Well, they're first. I feel like, yeah. I think the way Singapore. It's always bad. Something better. Sorry. I know traffic is on, that's okay, like. But it's still like, still like matching. Like, okay, good for you. Things traffic around, like, make it flesh instead of being like, oh. It's bad, it's a part, but we'll get rolling. Don't make it traffic again.
One more minute, guys, try to wrap up.
Oh, yeah. And I see like, there's city is interesting, it's lighter materials too. That's what I am thinking. There is like kind of a distinction.
All right. Who's going first? All right, there you go.
We discussed about how, like, comparatively to Singapore was very, it's the, natural environment seems very immersed in the built environment. It's very consistent throughout. It's very homogeneous. It's almost like a knit, as opposed to, Hong Kong. It's like they have their natural environment, but it's not really immersed in the built environment. You can see it's very separate. It's very heterogeneous. An example would be like oil and water versus like a knit, but like it's one's very fluid and one's, you can see the very distinct differences where there's more natural and where there's.
Hey, you guys get to pick the next group. And you shouldn't ask them if they're ready, you just gotta pick.
Okay, we'll go with Sarah up there.
Let's go.
So we were kind of talking about how, like, kind of the same thing, like how everything in Singapore seems kind of like integrated, and a lot of the systems kind of seem to be integrated with like having both like kind of like the metal and like the brick and all that with vegetation as well. So it kind of seems more like homogeneous in that sense. Whereas in Hong Kong, Lillian was saying it's very separate and like the line of separation is very clear, like there's kind of like no trees in the cities, you don't see a lot of vegetation once you're there. And we were also talking about how that kind of like relates to like the passive systems used in Singapore, which also might kind of help to make the city feel kind of less industrial. Kind of using that as like natural like shade and helping cool down buildings. And even like how that might affect kind of like the sound of the city as well, because maybe in Hong Kong, like if there's cars and buildings and you hear the air conditioning going, like it'll make a lot of noise. Whereas in Singapore, even if they still have those, the trees and the vegetation might kind of dampen a little bit of that sound as well.
Next.
Just to build on it, like we discussed very similar stuff, but as an analogy towards it, it's like pineapple on pizza for Singapore and then pineapple and pizza for Hong Kong. You know?
Pineapple and pizza?
Yeah. So like, no, so pineapple on pizza for Singapore because it's integrated. And then pineapple and pizza for Hong Kong, it's separated.
Good analogy, I love pizzas. Who doesn't?
I also noticed, in Singapore, the highway is kind of encapsulating the living area. Whereas if you look at Hong Kong, kind of sprawls out and it runs through the city, kind of dividing everything. I feel like it's a lot better infrastructure in Singapore.
Thank you guys. Next group, next group.
We think that in like Hong Kong, for example, it's like one of like the more it's more population in particular. The fact that there's like more vegetation, like more green space, because they use it in support, I guess. Basically also have this kind of this kind of group where like there's like a difference in like vegetation.
Pick the next group.
We're discussing how Singapore is very broad throughout the land. It's not a focus area, but Hong Kong is a lot focused by the water. So the housing is less in the mountains, less in the middle of the land, but more on the exterior, closer to the water.
So we were just saying that it looks like Singapore, the infrastructure is a lot better integrated into just the surrounding area. It's like on the side of Hong Kong, it just looks very cluttered and very busy, and it doesn't look like it complements the surrounding area, whereas in Singapore, it looks like it's a lot better integrated into the natural environment.
Like considering that the mountains is bigger and rounded compared to Singapore, it's like more flat, so maybe that's why they did this kind of like because of the environment. But then in Hong Kong also they have water, so maybe they chose this type of infrastructure because of the environment.
Next group, right?
Whoever has their hand raised.
We kind of just discussed like the built environment depends heavily on the natural, like depends on your terrain and what you're able to build. So maybe in Hong Kong, because of the mountains and where civilization is easiest, that's kind of where it went to. And then in Singapore, it might be easier to like spread it out more, so it looks more visually appealing.
Next group, Chris.
I don't know if that hasn't gone yet.
Those who haven't gone yet, raise your hand. There we go.
Okay, we kind of went general as well, but similar to what they said, like it affects where you build, but a downside here is that they're both near the water, so. Andrew said like natural disasters would be bad here, like a tsunami or something like that here would be really bad for both cities. But, yeah.
We can talk about how nature affects buildings. We didn't talk about Singapore or Hong Kong.
Yeah, we want more general.
We were saying, talking about how buildings are made up, like we need materials from the nature to build buildings, and we do build buildings on nature. And also, the pollution from buildings can affect the nature and natural disasters can affect buildings.
We're reading from the next week.
Oh, what else on that yet?
We were just talking about kind of the same thing and how, with the landscape, Hong Kong is more congregated, whereas Singapore is flatter, so it's easier to integrate the like nature itself. And however, both are still in their very own way built unnaturally. They don't, neither really adapt to the nature around them. Singapore is very spread out, so it takes most of the land, and Hong Kong is very condensed. So it's taken away from the actual sort of like the beauty of the land surrounding.
To add on to that note, what I see with like Singapore and Hong Kong is that Singapore, it's more of a, I guess the way they designed it is to like keep everyone, it's more, I see it more as a city visually, so it brings everyone closer together. Whereas in like the island, it's already isolated being an island, so I guess how they wanted to make it feel more isolated, that's why a lot of like the buildings are, you can see, are in their own little areas. But that's just an addition.
And we're ready for the next one.
So I kind of looked at it more, I was trying to see how the different things would affect the people that live there. So I was kind of thinking in the sense of seeing more how they incorporate the environment more into their daily living. It makes me think of how humans, we are still the same beings that were on the planet thousands of years ago, and we were built to be in the environment. So if you're looking at it from that perspective, people in Singapore may be more happy, they may have more joy in life because they're not like a freshwater fish thrown into salt water, something that we weren't designed to live in, which is a concrete jungle. But you could argue some people thrive in jungles, so it's, I don't know.
Adding on, we were talking about how in Singapore, it's very much integrated in the sense it blurs the line between inside and outside, which ultimately does affect people in a positive outlook. Because just being around like the weeds and green spaces to typically make people feel better, generally speaking. I also was trying to compare it to Sydney, Australia, and the infrastructure there, and how it's also very, it's kind of like a mixture between Singapore and Hong Kong, because there are spaces where it's completely untouched land, you're not allowed to really go there, but it's like, it's there, they're like untouched mountains and stuff, which is the Hong Kong terrain, but there are also flat spaces near the water where it's like this integrated space of like, when buildings get lower near the water and different spaces, and the trees are really close to all the buildings. Yeah.
Well, we were talking about a lot of the same stuff in Hong Kong, like you can, they might have a better relationship with like the water because I think the communities are more spread out. I can see that they're also maybe like they also did that to facilitate the travel between the different like islands. Also, yeah.
Right now, guys, give them some time.
We briefly talked about before it was a discussion, like while we comparing like Singapore and Hong Kong, like again, someone did mention that like, oh, we're using natural like for food to use material, and like we're getting like a city like Singapore, and like because of that, a lot of like environment is impacted. That people are trying to bring back the natural like into like Singapore or like the city, like the built environment. And like, yeah, and there's a balance of natural and like build, you have to respect that as well.
No.
Forgot to mention something earlier, sorry, it came to me while here. But the spaces in Singapore that are green are technically man-made green spaces. Or no,
think some, like sometimes there's like fake grass, like for turfs and stuff like that, and like it's, and like we need. Something pretty,
Like they
yeah,
they made the area very urban and then maybe decided that saw that it was too much like that and maybe brought in their own greenery. And not greenery that was like pre-existing
Yeah.
or pre-existing, but they. I don't know, they brought it back.
plus like if you compare Singapore, like if you look at the grass area and the tree area. Again, it could be just different lighting as well, but like it could be probably like the fake grass and compared to Hong Kong, it's with the mountains more natural, but again. For some areas.
The vote is done. Who else is it? Okay, there.
Okay, there's not really much new more to contribute, but it is basically the same thing that we heard all around. It's that Singapore seems to have integrated the nature more and like kind of more efficiently than Hong Kong. However, after listening to like almost everybody basically talk about the same thing, I was wondering like, is it really a proper comparison to put Singapore and Hong Kong to each other? Like one has mountains, one has a flat plain. It's that already changes up the field a little bit, right? And I guess I understand like how Singapore has flat, so that means that they can do city grids, they can sprawl, they have more freedom in urban planning and being more homogeneous with their natural environment, whether that be injected or integrated as part of that. But yeah, and then I also noticed it basically stems from the part that I noticed that there's a literal like highway having been dug through a mountain.
So you, let's add something, we'll come back to you guys for a second, so. Yeah. Yeah.
I was just gonna add to the point there that like Singapore is its own country and it's its own city too, so like out of that sense, it has to maximize the urban planning that it does. To ensure that it can grow like it wants to and that it can be as productive as it wants to be with its land and its people. But Hong Kong, on the other hand, you can see like, I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure Hong Kong's larger than Singapore is. So they have more land, so you don't exactly have to be as efficient as you need to be in Singapore.
The next group, I think there's only one left. There you go.
We kind of just a different question before we saw that Singapore tends to favor quality of life over Hong Kong, and Hong Kong seems more industrial, so therefore they're probably prioritizing import and exports and business. So when you look at all of these, one that like prioritizing more citizens, the other one's prioritizing more of like the production value, like I guess stuff like that.
Any group left? Nobody? Well, as a matter of fact, all your analyses are correct. It just depends on which viewpoint you're looking at, right? But the final conclusion is this. We have an influence on the nature, and the nature has an influence of us, right? It's an interaction between the two, and one might be a landlocked a little bit, the other one might have more space, one might be business oriented, one might be spirituality oriented and just enjoying their life. One might have limited infrastructure, limited materials. The other one might have an abundant amount of material, right? One might be impacted by the climate and the other one might be impacted by business, right? Everything you said is correct. It just depends on which viewpoint you want to look at. Here's an extreme example, back to the example that isn't there a right way to compare two countries or two locations to each other, right? Because their climate can be completely different, right? That is Oman, that's the capital of Oman, a country in the Middle East, Muscat. And as you can see, it's heavily influenced by those mountains there, right? But they try to survive anyways because they like maybe the sea, maybe they had some stuff going on. Back to our behaviors, right? Our cultural behaviors also impact how we develop our cities, okay? Sometimes we talk about privacy, but what does really privacy mean? Does privacy mean that people cannot look into your life? Or does it mean that they can just stay away? Or does it mean that you have good relation with your neighbor and they just don't ask you questions? We talk about privacy, but if you walk on the Sunnyside Avenue right across the campus, you see that all homes have big windows, and whenever you're walking in front of them, you see everything, right? Or you can sometimes see the cats looking at you, which is fun. But the truth is that really privacy? You have a $4 million home on Echo Drive, beautiful design, modern design, very gorgeous, $10,000 desk in it. But you are not spending your time in the living room because of the privacy problems, because everybody is taking that path for running. Everybody is looking into your house, right? Is that really privacy or is that not privacy? The cultural impact, environment impact, our preferences, the country preferences in terms of how they're going to regulate the business, how they're going to regulate their materials is all going to impact that. But we had a phase, this is a little bit of history. We had a phase where, you know how modern architecture happened, right? People were bored, new technology was there, it was cheaper, everybody wanted to take advantage of it, right? One of the primary reasons that is less discussed when you come to the architecture school or engineering school is that people were tired of the places that were not hygienic, and modern design was offering them that was super clean, super cut, and it's hygienic, right? So they opted in and they said, okay, we want modern architecture. 100 years later, we learned that we were messing up our environment, right? And now everybody is rushing toward reducing the carbon emissions, making everything sustainable. How are we going to do that? To be honest with you, nobody has an answer, because the population is growing, the demand for homes are growing, and at the same time, you're trying to reduce the emissions, right? So a lot of people are working. They're working on heat pumps, they're working on different things. How can we reduce our environmental impact, right? We don't put more carbon out there so that we don't kill ourselves, so that we don't make our race go extinct, right? So that's the thing. That's the most important part, maybe for this to learn. Now let's come to City of Ottawa. How many of you are not from Ottawa? That's perfect. Those who are from Ottawa, would you like to describe what Greenbelt is? Yes.
The city was originally supposed to stop the urban sprawl, but we expanded beyond it. But we're actually one of the cities in the world that has like the biggest green belt right at our core, and it has like experimental farming in it, and it has forest, and like we're just not allowed to build on it. It's a good thing.
Perfect. Anyone wants to add anything from Ottawa? Technique, yes, sir.
I don't know a lot about like the history of it or anything, but I live like in Canada, and like it's nice because like around your house there's like a bunch of ponds and like a lot of walking paths and hiking trails, things like that. So it kind of offers like green space even though you're still kind of in the city, which is nice.
Technically, the green belt was designed to protect the city so that we have greener space, so that something crazy does not happen here, right? And that's true. There is beautiful walking paths there. The experimental farm, which is more in the core of the city, it's a beautiful path if you want to go there for a walk, especially in the spring. There's a lot of new cool stuff happening always. And then you have all these cute trails. You can see the Greenbelt Trail. That's a whole trail, but there's like a nice lake or a pounder, which is super nice. What we tried to make sure the city is beautiful and gorgeous and saving it by our beautiful green belt. But then the population was growing. People are like, oh, why not Ottawa? I want to move from Toronto to Ottawa. I love Ottawa, so why not there? And then we needed to grow more, right? And as you can see, there are like clustered homes happening in different areas, right? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? That's a decision for you to make later on as professionals. That are you going to let that happen or not? But it's technically called leapfrogging, which is like you just move everything you want from out of the core, take it out of the belt, use it there, right? Now, it's a question for you later on to decide, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? But for sure, they are making sure that that green belt is not harmed, right? Because everybody wants to preserve the nature. Technically, every country or every culture is different. But something that we all have been looking at least in major cities for the past few decades, is that you have one big center, and then as you move out of that core or out of that center, you get apartments, you get big homes, then you get more stuff happening there, then you get mansions out of that core, and that core is the heart of the city because it's where the downtown is, it's where all the offices are, it's where everything is happening, it's where business is thriving, right? If you look at other cities, for example, if you go to Europe, you might see something more like this, or if you go to Switzerland, you might see something more like this. Why? Maybe because the farming situation was somehow that they wanted to keep these clusters here, there, and then just creating a path along them, right? Now, that's from engineering point of view. Of course, there is cultural point of view, there is historical point of view, and also there is a philosophical point of view, right? Why did we build it like this? Why were the places of worship the center of most ancient cities, right? If you go from to Babylon in Middle East, all the way to Europe, and then to some of the countries in North America and South America, why are the places of worship always the middle in the downtown, right? Because it was a place for people to gather together, and then they were kind of connecting to the sky from that place, right? And then again, going back home from those spaces, right? That's a philosophical aspect of it, but it has an impact on us when we want to reduce our emissions, right? So we maybe need to reinvent a new model, or maybe we have to work with something that we have, like we're trying to build green roofs to reduce urban heat island. What is urban heat island? When the sun is glowing, the cities get really hot, and the city core is hotter than the outside or the outskirts of the city, right? That's what the urban heat island is. We'll get back to it later on in period, of course. So maybe we need to reinvent that, or we need to work with the cities that we have, right? That's a question for you as engineers to later on answer. Here are other options, right? We were impacting the natural environment, maybe in a sustainable way. And the Algonquin Park has an interesting history that you can go and look it up, but I can give you a little bit of hint. Do you think it's a park, or do you think it was a place for business? People from Ottawa especially. And by business, we are not referring to dropping jungle rave parties. So that's any business, but yes. So what's that? A logging area? Alcon table, guys, don't forget. Any other guesses? It's a park now, but they were actually using it for business and some logging and some lumber and stuff happening there. So they were using it for a business purpose, but now it's a park. Right? And here comes the Ottawa, beautiful painting. I really like that painting. And there's a history to it. You can see the parliament in the background. You can see how the river was being used. You can see how everything was being transported to the city of Ottawa, right? Now, we talked about Singapore in earlier examples. We talked about Hong Kong, and then we talked about Oman or Muscat, which was impacted harshly by the environment. Which one do you think is better, hard or soft? You already discussed it in your groups. Do you need 5 minutes to discuss it in the group, or you're ready to answer? You're ready to answer? Perfect. So let's just start. Who's volunteering? Which one is better and why? Yes?
The soft urban nature divide, just because, well, as like Lillian was saying, it's like easier on the eye, like it's more aesthetically pleasing. But also like there's so much more that we can gain from nature being closer to us. So like as she was telling you about passive systems and like things like that, so less energy usage, better for the environment, and a lot more sustainable. The harder nature and urban divide, I find will honestly like kind of lead us towards more factories and pollutions. And isn't the way that we should go now.
Knock on the table, guys. Don't forget, knock on the table. Next person, do you want to add something first?
Yeah, I was gonna add on, I definitely think the soft urban like nature divide is better for the people living in the city. But like, I do think it's interesting because a hard divide protects like the natural world in a way that a soft divide maybe doesn't. So it depends on your perspective, I guess.
Knock on the table. I'll come back to you and the rest of you guys, there first.
I was gonna say like, a hard divide is better, but honestly, a soft divide is much better for the overall, aspect of this people, because you want to have more, like, some people want to get homes and stuff like that, and if you have like a hard divide, you wouldn't have that much homes for people, and like, you know, and that, kind of like the whole crazy, like. Not that much places for people to stay.
Yeah, similar to what she said over there, like, I think it depends which one has a bigger footprint, like if you add it all together, because even like with Singapore and Hong Kong, it almost looked like I don't know if they were zoomed in the same, but it almost looked like Singapore was covering more square footage than Hong Kong was, but it could have been. skewed.
Back on the table. Sir, I'll come back to you guys. There was a answer here first. Did you want to add something?
After this fire, like based on like when there's no trees in the way, like certain types of trees may grow up because of that. So if you do a soft divide, it would allow like a bit more of like nature to also sprawl and have a bit more biodiversity. As opposed to just like cutting it off immediately and then like those trees would have to die away. And other trees would have to have to.
Knock on the table. We'll go over here first and then we'll come back to you.
I feel like at first initial glance, soft urban divide would be ideal. Just because it pays more respect to the nature around it, but when you're really considering how a hard divide comes to be, it oftentimes it's there because urban spaces, there's populations are growing and construction development has to occur, but you want to preserve that land. And so a hard divide almost never just appears. It starts as a soft divide and then over time development and construction continues and urban areas that densify, and that's what leads to the hard divide because you either are able to preserve that area where you sprawl. And so I feel like it depends on the situation. Initially, it would just be ignorant to just have an initial hard divide, but most places start as a soft divide due to trying to find a balance between the natural environment without building and everything. At the same time, people need things to work, places to live, that's how hard divide comes to be. So it's not necessarily a black and white answer. And the longer you look at it, the more questions, the more opinions can arise from it.
Come back to you next.
Hard, the divide is very hard on the environment. There's a lot of material being displaced at once, and although it's like what she said, like it's not happening all at once. Like we're not just building up a city overnight. It's over time. But with a soft divide starting off, it's less material. There's more chance for the earth to kind of not fight back, but to like sustain itself. Whereas over time, a hard divide, it's just more material getting displaced, and it's just disrupting the earth.
I feel like, well, when discussing what's better in hard divide or soft divide, we need to consider the environment, the circumstances, what land are we working with, right? Because the soft divide, I am partial towards a soft divide, I do prefer one, but again, like what was mentioned earlier, a hard divide isn't necessarily something that we choose to do, it's something that sometimes just happens. But like if we go back to Singapore as an example, that had like a soft divide with nature, I would have to pose the question that is it really a soft divide if those green spaces are man-made, and therefore we are putting species and things there that aren't necessarily supposed to grow there, and we are still getting rid of the area that was there before, unless we find a way that actually works with the environment that we're building on. We are ultimately going to destroy the environment in that area that we are building in, either direction.
Knock on the table. We'll come back to you in a second. We had something there. Yes, sir.
Time and place for both, because we can't just displace all the people that are in the hard divide and expect them to find places for a soft divide, because that's not gonna happen, and we're gonna ruin places like the green belt that we have where they have nowhere else to go. So there definitely is a time and place for a hard divide. I think it could be done better for sure, because there is the point where you're putting man-made green into a hard divide and then it's no longer beneficial. But I think a soft divide definitely looks more aesthetically pleasing because everyone gets to see trees all the time.
I'll come back to you too. Just wait a second. We have something there over there.
I feel like a soft divide definitely improves from a personal perspective, the quality of life. Right, whereas if you have a hard urban divide, you have more of a city focused on production, more efficient, but lesser quality of life.
Go back to you. We were going first, yes.
Soft design is very like, I feel like it limits the carbon footprint, which is awesome. But something about the hard design, I know because people are gonna be things here,
they're gonna have their preferences between the hard and soft design. So I feel like there is a time and place for hard design, it's just the fact that we need to find like a balance in between to make sure that people like the concrete jungles and prefer that compared to a soft design where I know I definitely prefer that way more. So just finding.
Knock on the table. What's up, Steve?
What is better is the question, because regardless, people are gonna choose where they wanna live. I'm from like Toronto, north of Toronto, and it's a soft kind of thing. And it's based off affordability, like how many people are living in the area. If you like the city, you're living in the city. If you love being in the country, or you're gonna go, it's gonna be more like, feel like you have a hard vibe. So I think regardless, people are gonna choose, and I think where you are and what city you're in, will dictate whether or not hard or soft is the better vibe.
Come back to the word affordability, that's important, just remind me if I forget, knock on the table. I'll come back to you and to you, but before we had someone here that had what something to add.
Yeah, I guess you could argue as well that a hard divide could utilize the space better. For example, if you have a huge apartment building, you can house many more people in that place as opposed to just one home, if they get the same amount of space.
Knock on the table.
I think like, if you look at a soft divide, like it looks more appealing, but when we go to a hard divide, like I know a lot of the European cities are more like a hard divide. And for the population, it's usually better because things are closer together, so it's more easily accessible for the population living there. And I think that really reduces like greenhouse gases and stuff like that. Where if you look like at Ottawa, like there's a lot of green space, but you're traveling like with a car everywhere, you're not necessarily walking or biking, that's because everything's spread out. So even though for the population, you have like a better quality of life, in a sense, you also don't because you're releasing so much more like emissions than you would like replace more convents.
Knock on the table. Yes.
On was just said, I do believe that for soft, urban, like, divides, there needs to be a lot more focus on, how we're getting to places like transit and like a way to cut back on travel and those emissions. And speaking on emissions, what I said earlier about those spaces being, the green spaces being man-made, those spaces also need to be taken care of and all of the stuff that goes into taking care of it. Like our grass is actually an invasive species. So, and we have to constantly water it and cut it, and it takes up a lot of like time and energy and also carbon emissions trying to like battle it and everything. So I would argue that is it really one taking more emissions than the other? Like I haven't seen any studies like proving one way or another. I would love to see that, but just a question to be posed.
Knock on the table. Anyone else who wants to add something? Nobody? Okay, how do you guys feel about 10 minutes or 15 minutes of a break and then we'll come back and then we'll discuss it more? 10 minutes okay, or you want 15 minutes, or it was too harsh the course to be 20 minutes? What do you feel? 15 is all right, 15 is okay, all right, let's do 15 and we'll come back. It's 7:05, perfect timing, 7:05, see you back at 7:20.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say. Guys, something I really recommend, because you're going to be engineers, if you sit in your places for another hour, you're going to be like me, you're going to have a hunchback, so make sure you at least stand up and go around, take a walk for 10 minutes.
It's just like. That's be the next major question, sorry.
The major question is going to be, is the red vinegar or white? The pizza.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
The pineapples on the pizza is a good thing. I never tried it. I tried it back in 2018. I was like, this is a cool idea. Why didn't you ever try it before?
It's so good, pineapple.
Yeah, I know. So surprised.
It doesn't matter.
The slides are going to go to How's it going?
Everything else.
But my bad. I don't have a problem. I bet it's
Oh, I know for sure that this guy got a picture.
We had mechanics and solids, it was so nice. This is.
Yeah, I know. You guys are really convinced.
Oh, you took credit for it.
That's the point.
That's why. Yeah, no, the Jack is blocked, no, Jack is it, he looks like, he thinks he wants to be, that's it. He's great.
Yeah.
Right, I think everybody's back. I hope you're all fully recharged and had a great 15 minutes. Now let's talk about it, hard or soft urban and nature divide, which one is better, right? So one thing to point out is that in engineering, it's always you that needs to go in, be the hero and get out, right? That's what you're doing, right? You are the engineers, you are the one who are taking the risk, or taking the liability for making decisions on behalf of the population, right? You go in, you solve the problem and that's it. And the rest, it's on people to just do the things that they're supposed to, right? Which one is better? Let's talk about one of the most controversial topics, right? If you're going with the soft one, if you're just increasing the average problem, is it going to harm the biodiversity? Is it going to harm the wildlife? Surprisingly, new research suggests you're going to impact the wildlife, but it's not going to be that significant. It's just one of the research. If you go to research from other areas, they're probably showing the opposite as well, right? There's always both end of the spectrum when it comes to research and which one is better, right? And something else is that when you have the soft divide, it's not just the soft divide and making it look nice or having the nature in there. The fact is that, as you pointed out, is that sometimes you become car dependent. Sometimes you have to do the transportation, right? Imagine if you are living in Canada, which is in the west of Ottawa, and you have to buy a car, it's about 25 minutes to do, right? Be the bus, it's about 1 hour, 20 minutes. Why do I know? Because there's a good food place there to do it. I really like it. But that's how I know. But it's like 45 minutes by car on the highway, and God forbid you're there on the rush hour and you're hungry, right? It's not gonna work. You go there and it's crazy. So that's one of the other things, right? We talked about affordability. Right? Sometimes we decide, let's move to the outskirts, let's move outside of the core to make it more affordable, right? Your decisions as engineers is going to impact not just the affordability, but how people perceive affordability, right? Let me put it in a simple example for you. EVs are perfect for environment, let's put it that way, right? Especially if you're like from Quebec. The emissions for electricity is really low, so when you're charging your car with electricity there, your environmental impact is really low compared to Ontario, which is about 30 grams of emissions per 30 grams of emissions per every kilowatt hour. Right? That's very nice. That's very good. But the question is, are you raising the prices of EVs so high that it's not affordable? And then you put policies that force people to buy the EVs? Or are you going to make them affordable so that everybody can make a conscious decisions and buy them? Because if you increase the price, then everybody is going to think that anybody who has that particular type of EV is a rich person. Not saying that that image is important, but I'm saying that it impacts the cultural, it has cultural outcomes, right? There was a time that people were taxed on their properties based on the number of windows that they have, right? And guess what? Rich and affluent, they say, no problem, let's just deconstruct it with fewer windows, right? So your decisions as engineers have impact. Now, which one is better, hard or soft? It really depends on the location. It really depends on what you're doing, right? Each one of them has their own pros and cons, and really up to us to do a analysis, a sensitivity analysis, and see which one is better and which one is worse. Does that make sense? That's part of the course as well. You're going to learn how to think as an engineer. Develop that critical thinking, right? We have these discussions in the classroom so that you are developing that critical thinking. And when you are going into a firm, or you start your own firm, or you're hired by the city of Ottawa, or you're hired by the provincial government, or even the federal government, you can go in, assess the risk, how to mitigate them, and which one is the best solution, right? That's part of the job. Now, to continue, we have two different topics. I guess we had great answers from you from the previous discussion. So I'm going to limit this to about 5 people to answer the question, because you all are smart and you all already answered anything that we're going to discuss. There's this idea that human is on top of the chain, and we are absolutely having the right to control everything. And there's this other idea that no, we are actually part of the environment. The decisions we make is going to impact other animals, or the wildlife, or the nature, and we shouldn't harm other species, right? We should just grab as much as we need and is sustainable before harming the entire planet, right? We get our needs done, we cover our needs, and nothing more. Do not ruin the environment. Which one do you think is better? Let's go with the voting part. Like those who say the human is part of the environment and we should not harm it, and we're not part of the, you're not on the top of the chain, raise your hands. The rest of you are going to take advantage of the planet, kill us? Anyone? So those who say that the human is on top of the chain, raise your hands. Okay, and the rest of you who have no opinion, what are you doing? All right. Well, perfect, right? That's the opinion. Anybody wants to discuss on the both ends that why you believe you're part of the environment? You limit this to 3 people.
Well, I believe we're part of the environment because it's like a give and take, right? So like we get so much benefit from like nature and treating it well. Versus the second we start to get a little bit more arrogant and believe that we are on top of the environment. Nature has its own consequences, as you can see with climate change, and as well as like flooding and like these insane natural disasters that are happening as direct consequences of believing we're on top of the food chain. I don't think it's our decision to make. I think you can just see the nature's response to it and then understand that no, we are actually part of the environment.
Knock on the table. We want to hear an opposing opinion. Opposing opinion.
Yeah, I think that both are right, because on one hand, we do interact with the environment every day, like we're part of the environment, like what we give and we take, like very, very the other way. But our brain is a lot more developed than a lot of other species in the planet, so it's like, we obviously have, I think whales in the world, I doubt we have like fossil fuel issues, I don't know, like, so on one hand, we're like top of the pyramid, but no matter how high up we are, we're still gonna have to interact with our environment and be part of it.
Knock on the table. An opinion, I'll come back to you guys, an opinion for the environment?
Like similar to what she said, I think we have the biggest impact out of everything else, like we can affect the most things. But obviously if we want to stay around, then we've got to treat it like we're part of the environment.
On the table. An opposing opinion, you were waiting in the line?
Yeah, I mean, I rose my hands. But I don't think that these two are related necessarily. I think we're on top of the food chain because we are the smartest animals and we know how to take advantage of that. But we also have the biggest impact on the earth. So I don't think they're related.
Knock on the table. An opinion for the environment, last chance? Yes.
To the humans power, but we can also destroy the environment, and animals can live without us.
Knock on the table. An opposing opinion? Nobody? All right, you're correct. Technically, at some point, you're on top of the chain, you're developing things, and sometimes you're part of a thing. But what this entrepreneurism is, sorry, I sometimes can't pronounce those words. I cannot also pronounce the word wet, the full word, I could never pronounce it. A view that humans are the most important aspect on Earth. Good idea, we are important, we know we are smarter, we have developed better IQs, right? But it does not necessarily mean that we can take advantage of other things, right? That's the most important. So we are still part of the system. If we make a species go extinct, we might not deal with the consequences for that particular, but with another species might be extinct because we extincted one, and then it's a chain reaction that is going to impact us at the end, right? You all know these articles on bees and what's happening to them, right? If you don't know, you can just go and read them. So the idea is that it's really how we look at it, but technically at the end of the day, we are part of the system. Now, built environment impact on the natural environment. We really talked about it in the previous discussions that we had in the city, right? We have the material, we have the construction, we have the infrastructure happening. Some of them are landlocked. They really cannot expand their infrastructure. Some of them can have nicer infrastructure in one place that they can contain it, right? And it does not impact nature that much. You have the operations, which are really one of the most important things, right? You design the most energy efficient building in the world. It's the best building ever built by you in the entire globe. But if you put occupants in the house and in the middle of winter, they decide to open the window because they're feeling hot rather than bring a thermostat a little bit down, it's not going to work, right? You need that operation phase where your occupants are also operating or citizens are operating in the city. You need to make sure that that phase is also working. That's where you have these incentives and interventions where you go and teach people, this is how you should be using this. And we hope that you use this, right? And if they don't listen, you do something that the city of Ottawa is doing, right? They were trying to reduce the waste. It was not happening. City of Ottawa decided, okay, if you're not reducing the waste, we're going to enforce it. How? Right now, we limit the garbage collection to 3 black beans or 3 trash bags, right? It was 6 before, if I'm not mistaken. Now it's 3, right? If you don't listen, we're going to enforce it. So those are the things that can happen, right? But after that comes a phase that you need to deconstruct, you need to demolish the building, right? Or the infrastructure because it's old or you don't need it. What are we going to do now? Are we just going to dump it, or at some point we're just going to sending them to the sky and putting them out there in the universe because we don't want them on there, right? Then that's the universe pollution, right? They tried to do that, but it didn't work really well. So there's a lot of trash going around Earth right now. So that's not the best idea, right? Bring it back to the system, and that's something that will come back quickly to in the next slide. Urban heat island, we already discussed about it. When you build in different ways and you don't have green roofs and there's solar radiation, you are going to have heated cores where technically the temperature of the city is way higher than the outskirts of it, right? And that's not good. That's not good for the environment. It's not good for human beings because at the end of the day, you have to change the thermostat. It's going to impact the emissions. Does that make sense? Any questions so far? Nobody? All right. And the last one is erosion of soil, right? Anything that you build is going to impact the planet, right? Now, I have something there from US, a sample detailed review of how we have all these environmental hazards going on, right? And this is from the United States, and this is where your job kicks in as engineers. Later on, you're the ones who are supposed to put those documents together, right? You will be in charge of those documents. You're going in, you're going to carry out analysis, and you're going to see how the things that other people are building or you are building is going to impact the environment and how the environment is limiting you or influencing you, right? That's a big report. I recommend you go and read it. We're not going to cover it, but it's just to give you an idea what you're going to do later on as engineers, right? And it's not just limited to the architecture environment, it's also to all those. How many of you are using Nike, for example? You like Nike shoes? Raise your hands. Nike is nice. Nike has perfect things, right? Nike, by the United States, is forced now to provide an F10 form. An F10 form is technically a form that forces Nike to say their supply chain, their operations, and all those things, how much emissions is going to put out there, right? So Nike, perfect. You're having the production lines. They have beautiful collections. I personally love their running shoes. I love the Air Force One as well. I'm not gonna lie. But at the end of the day, the government is forcing them to make sure that they are sustainable, make sure that their operations are sustainable. Their supply chain is sustainable, right? And guess what? Nike, 10 years from now, is coming to you and putting you as part of the team and be like, okay, how much is the emissions in Canada for us, right? And that's where you go in and you try to solve the problem and say, okay, this is not very sustainable, let's do it this way, right? Now, we're talking about all these things. We talk about how occupants and how operations and how our behaviors and how our culture is impacting the environment, right? I want you to think about yourself. Are you living in a condo? Are you living in an apartment? Are you living in a mansion? You're living in a big mansion that you have to just operate it for 4 people, or are you living in a small condo just for 1 person? The question. Transportation. Are you living close to where you study and work? Are you far from because you want to enjoy the lake and outdoor activities, so you have to drive every day for like 2 hours? Grocery shopping. Do you go around the corner, or do you go somewhere that you can, I don't know, for example, price match and make things better, or you have a discount, right? That's an extra distance that you have to travel. Do you bike or do you drive? Which one is better? Cities in North America are mostly very car dependent, right? Because everything is too far, and that's because of how we design the city. Or versus where you go to, for example, Netherlands, everything is really bikeable. You can get around quickly, right? And people love biking, right? Now put aside the harsh environment, it's a decision for you whether you want to be on a bike in the harsh winters or not. I have friends who do that. I personally don't like it. But it's great. If you can do it, that's perfect. Does anyone want to share their experience regarding this? Anything that you find interesting, either on the sustainable part or not very sustainable part? I will start with my behavior in a very not sustainable part. I'm a Jeep boy and I drive a Jeep, and it's putting a lot of emissions out there, but I'm an outdoors person. So I'm sorry for it, but I'm doing it. Anyone else?
I was gonna say, I just bought a bike, to come to school, and I realized, like, if I had a car, it would probably take, I'm close to the school, but it would probably take me longer to drive with a car than it does to bike, and I just thought that was crazy, that like, I'd be spending on gas, emitting gas, and it's quicker anyway to bike, at least for now. till the
And
winter,
insurance
but-
as well.
Yeah.
Knock on the table. Anybody else who wants to share their?
I'd have the option to take the bus, but it's more efficient for me to just take my truck. It's quicker, so I just take my truck.
Next, knock on the table. Anyone else who wants to share the experience regarding home transportation, anything, grocery shopping?
Like, I drive a car because I live a bit further away, but sometimes I come in, sometime rarely. I know people and and they're near my house, so I would drive them back, so it's like I am carpooling, just a way to save emissions, because my parents, when I was younger, they were, 2 cars, but since now we're older, we have our own vehicle, they carpool to save emission. And as well, another thing, my best friend showed me about the price matching, and I told my parents, but since they're busy, cancel, I'm responsible for price matching when I go grocery shopping with them to save them money.
Nice, knock on the table. I personally like price matching, especially for those Greek yogurts that are just expensive for no reason. Sorry, gotta tell you the truth. Anybody else?
And my brother and sister, we all study here in Ottawa. So we share one car between us all, and we all plan on when we're going grocery shopping or whatever. And whenever I go to store, I like it's faster than driving.
Another idea, knock on the table. Nobody likes grocery shopping with themselves, right? It's good to have company.
What I had, so you drive to a further grocery store for price matching, but the price of gas to drive to that grocery store will basically be the difference you're paying. For Greek yogurt.
Knock on the table. I like the idea, but yeah, that's true. I do it, but for me, it's personally the vibe of the store as well, because sometimes I don't like some of the stores, but that's what I do. My favorite store is Metro on Banker Street, from like McKean or Mac, I don't know what the family is. Anybody else?
I do like to walk to Carlton just because I live close enough, thankfully, and also, I think it's like more of an enriching experience just because you actually like notice the landscape around you versus driving. I have driven before and I'm always like stressed out about like other cars coming around. And I'm generally just more stressed out after driving versus like walking. I generally feel calmer.
Mark on the table.
I brought my bike up to school and I honestly think that bike is one of the best forms of transportation. My issue with biking in Ottawa is I feel like Ottawa isn't really advanced in like bike paths and like transportation too, like the TT or OC Transpo. But like I wanted to bike to Walmart and I was like, I think the only way to get to the village to Walmart is through that giant like almost highway looking street. I don't know what it is. And I was like, I'm not gonna bike there. So it's very limiting, especially here.
Mark on the table. Anyone else?
So, a lot of people that I was supposed to be there, because I live in the beginning set. I think we have several areas, so, when we drive here, sometimes we have I'm sorry, I can't go to parking lot, and either bus, or they just get the bus.
Yeah, Ottawa is not as good as Toronto when you want to bike, especially if you like to bike on Canal. Be careful on the right side where is the Colonel Drive. The Queen's Elizabeth is a little bit better. If you're biking on the other side, be a little bit careful because the conditions is not perfect. I had a friend who had ran into an accident, so just be careful about that. Something fun fact about me: I just live on Sunnyside, so I'm super close to campus. Sometimes wrong. But fun fact. Any other one? Any other person who wants to share the experience? Nobody? All right, there we go. Now we have two scope when things come to analysis, right? We have two words, temporal and spatial, right? The spatial one is technically anything physical that we have, right? The building, the infrastructure, systems that you need, the components of the buildings, anything that you need is called spatial, right? It includes literally anything built. Temporal is anything that involves time, right? Or as I put it there, time cycle, time scale, right? Example of that is life cycle phase of analysis, which means you build the building perfect. The operation is also important, right? It's not the building itself, it's operation. It's the operation, it's the time as well that people are spending there and how they're behaving in there, right? Those are super important. Whenever you're doing analysis, keep this in mind that you have two different scopes. One that is happening with the physical, something that's happening right now is spatial, and then something that's happening over time, which is temporal, right? And based on what we are doing, this is going to impact our analysis, right? Sometimes you just want to consider sun and homes, right? Homes is one of those spatial, or the building part of this, right? And the sun has a temporal phase to it as well, right? And the timing of that sun, the location of it is all going to impact your building too, right? Depending on your analysis, it's going to really impact what is better. And the best analysis are comprehensive one, which consider everything all together, right? But sometimes for the scope of the things that you're doing, it really doesn't matter, right? Let's say you have a small community which is driven based on some business, right? They have a high voltage tower that they need to use for their businesses. They have their homes, they have their factory, and they need a car to drive to them. That might be the scope of your analysis for that community, right? And that's what you consider. As engineers, it's really up to you to draw those boundaries, right? To give you an example, we work with the federal government right now on a project. And for our project, we had to define scopes, right? And that scope does not include all aspects of federal employees' life. Just includes the aspects that are related to the analysis that you're doing, right? So that is important to understand that there are things beyond buildings, beyond the built environment, right? And this is in Toronto. It's not just the building that is important, it's the tower that is important, it's how the people walk on those streets, which is important. It's the sky, the sound condition, the climate, all those things are important. Many of those things change over time. They're not going to be constant. And that's where the idea of building resiliency comes to mind, right? It's not something that you build right now. You need to build something that in 50 years is still operational, especially if you're going to have the climate change, that's going to impact our building significantly. We'll come back to that later on, but this is a community in Alberta, if I'm not mistaken. It's very unique because those are not solar panels. Surprise. So they are not solar panels. What they are is that the sun warms the water, in those roofs, and the rainwater, they collect everything. They put it into ground. They store the heat there, and then in winter, they reuse that heat through the building. So fun, right? It's really an engineering innovation, yes.
Do you know how they store the heat?
How do they store it?
Yeah,
They
like,
send it deep in the ground. Opposing to, do you know what geothermal is? Instead of bringing the heat, it's like an artificial geothermal thing, right? They just store it in the ground. I don't have exact specification and details of what the storage looks like, but they store it in those boreholes in the ground and then just reuse it back in the winter.
do you think like the disturbing of like the underground, like the topsoil and the soil is like worse than if they didn't do that? Like, do you know what I mean?
That's a good question. And I'm pretty sure that they did unlicensed engineers when we were designing, right? And they have to do it because it's like mandated in most countries, right? Another crazy example of that is when they were building some of those infrastructure in Dubai or the one in Saudi Arabia, which is like a one of these infrastructure they had. They didn't do the analysis comprehensively, and some of the marine life died there. But then they came up with the idea, technically the marine life itself didn't die. The things that the fish were having the food out of his planktons or something, the plankton died, so the fish had to move away, right? And the entire perimeter of about 10 kilometers, not 10 kilometers, maybe 5 kilometers, there was no marine life there after they built the infrastructure, right? And then later on, they come up with the idea, okay, the pros is better than the cons. We just don't have a perimeter of 5 meters with any marine life. Who cares? We just need the water to be used, right? So it really depends on the engineer and what you're doing, but that's a decision for them to make. These are some fun facts and something for you for the final exam. I'm not going to be like asking you what percentage of the space is going to be heated there, right? It's just if you're going to, for the final exam, you're going with general topics, general ideas, right? So you're not asking about exact numbers, like what's 90% of the space heating. You're not asking those numbers in case you sometimes like are worried about those things. They're not going to ask about those things. But that website, I highly recommend it. There's a lot of fun facts about the place. It's a cool idea. It's very unique, let's say. But now they built a very nice community, which is self-sufficient. 90% of the heating is covered by that boreholes or the heat storage that they have. That's a residential community. They definitely have life out of their personal life, right? They have to work unless they are millionaires. They have to go to school, right? Or whatever. They have to commute to downtown or somewhere. Do you think having that nice community, about 35 kilometers or even more, I don't know, 20 kilometers? Yeah, 35 kilometers to the center, sorry. 35 kilometers to the center is better, or the transportation is going to impact it? The transportation is going to offset all the savings that you have, because now you have to drive a truck. And remember, it's Alberta. The winter's crazy there, right? Anyone from Alberta? Nobody from Alberta? I have a few friends from Alberta. Are you? No, sorry. So winters there are crazy, right? What do you think? You're an engineer and you're given, you were given, I don't know, $50 million, and like, we need a community to be built for us. You go and figure it out. What would you do? Would you take the community way outside the city and then they have to commute every day, even if they want it to be a gated community, or no? Yes.
It could be a park community. They'll just have to think of like a bullet train going from the community to the city directly. That could be really efficient.
Love the idea, problem solving. Knock on the table. Never forget, guys, never forget.
I could have already said, but how big is this community? Like, it's big that was built.
It's actually one of the fun facts in the community, but I think the residents were about 1,000. I might be mistaken, might be totally mistaken, but I don't remember.
Just because with him saying mid-train, and like if it was like it's a pretty small number for a train to be built, that's like, it's a big, you know what I mean? Like you can't even have train stop at the school.
Maybe the infrastructure.
Population that's smaller than the high school, you know, wouldn't necessarily be. But that's just.
Knock on the table. Sorry, I missed the first word. Put the school there, smart idea, but there might be other businesses as well, but knock on the table. It's also nice to have a school included in the community, and that's what they should do, but also bringing a school or other infrastructure like firefighters and then police department is going to also put extra costs on the community, right? Any other ideas?
Maybe that land there is already being designated for other projects.
Maybe. Up on the table. Yeah, that's it. To really understand the impact, this is how it should be done. If you're an engineer and you're required by a community or by the city to just quantify the impact of that residential community on the environment, you need to go and survey those households. What do you do? How often do you travel? What's your daily commute? What do you do? And then calculate the emissions for those entire things, calculate the savings they have from their homes, and then see if it's good or not. Right? That's how it should be done. As engineers, that's how you will do it. So I don't have the answer to, it's just we are saying that these might be the problem, but these might be the benefits. This is a very super nice self-sufficient home, I would say. Those panels are there, the air there is heated, and then it goes in the building and heats up the place. It's in a remote area. I think it's between Ottawa and Montreal, if I'm not mistaken. Do you see a problem with this design? How many of you are familiar with architectural drawings? Raise your hand. How many of you are not familiar with architectural drawings? Raise your hand. And the rest of you are... Okay, anyways, do you see a problem? Technically, this is a diagram. This is a side elevation of the building. So you're looking at the buildings from the side. Anybody? Yeah.
That the trees are gonna grow and they didn't really include that in the drawings. I don't know why it goes like bigger to smaller, maybe I don't know if they meant like the trees as they get closer to the building get smaller, but either way, they're gonna shape the building since it's.
Not on the table? Any other problems? That's actually the main problem, right? When the architect was designing it, they were like, okay, this will cut the trees, you'll receive enough sunlight, but they didn't think that the owner has to hire somebody to cut all these trees every 5 years, right? They're like, okay, it sounds cool idea. Let's get it LEED certified and then certified, but we don't care. Got their money, goodbye, right? So that's what happened, and the owners probably have a problem. That's actually the big problem with most of those major projects, right? How many of you are familiar with Villa Savoy? Perfect. Do you know what happened to the owner of Villa Savoy? Villa Savoy is a building. It's a villa in France. That's what you call Savoy. It's S-A-V-O-Y, if I'm not mistaken. That's how they spell it. And it's designed by Le Corbusier, a very famous architect. You can go and look it up. It's not part of the course. That's why I didn't include it. But technically, beautiful home. It's a landmark. It's actually owned by the foundation of Le Corbusier right now. And it's something that tourists go to visit. This was one of the masterpieces of modern architecture. I'm an architect / building engineer myself. So I love architects, not putting it out there. So I always support architects. And the design at the time was unique. It was perfect. It was amazing, right? Everybody wanted the hygienic spaces. But after 5 years, the owner was like, what is this that you designed for me? It is not even working the way it is intended to. Put big windows there, small radiators here. I'm dying. I'm leaving at this house, right? The owner sold it. She was like, I'm out of here. I don't want it, right? The architect designed a masterpiece in terms of architectural competence. But what about the engineering competence? What about the occupant comfort competence? What about the environmental hazards that it's going to put out there, right? If you're like me, an architect / building engineer, you can think about the whole thing. If you're just an engineer and you have to work with an architecture firm, you need to put it out there for them. You're like, Mr. Architect or Mr. Architect or whatever, I really like your design, but this is going to be messed up in 5 years. Sorry about that. Yeah, your occupants are not going to like it. Another building designed in the United States by Frank Lloyd Wright, he was a perfect architect. It's called The House on the Waterfall, right? What happened to it? It's a beautiful home. I'd love to live there, right? It's literally on a waterfall. The owner, after just 1 year of moving in, the wife of the owner actually, she was like, this place is too humid. I cannot survive. I'm out of here. And the home is again owned by the foundation, and the original owners are not living there, right? The architect designed a masterpiece. Everybody loves it. I love to look at it from outside, right? But what is it actually going to be like to live in there, right? And that's something that the different components of buildings are going to impact it. That's why building engineering, architectural engineering, and all the other engineering are important when it comes to designing. Even just a simple infrastructure, right? Don't design something and don't think about it. The temporal aspect, back to the terminology that you're using, the temporal aspect is super important. Design the best building in the spatial scope. In 2 years, nobody can live with it. What is this? Garbage, right? Not garbage, actually. I love those buildings. I still like to live in them, but deal with the humidity, eh? So they're not good, right? You need to think about it. Back to the question. So you know how to solve that question. Is sustainable to be sustainable? Transportation is probably going to offset some of the emissions. This is what I told you about in Dubai. They are just creating stuff there. What's the biggest impact aside from the mirror life and the stuff that is happening there, which is things looks super cool, eh? But what's the big problem?
It's a problem with a lot of developments on the water. Reclaimed land often is the first to sink with water over the rest.
Not on the table. Any other guesses? Yeah. Yep, not on the table. Others? The biggest problem is that the population is growing. We need more homes, we need more offices, and the businesses are thriving. We're not in recession yet, so it means that the businesses are going to be booming. And you're not installing enough heat pumps or other energy efficiency measures. So guess what? That rise in temperature is still going to happen. We're just hoping to limit it. And guess what? In 20 years, what's going to happen to these islands? You buy it for $10 million, it's going on the water. Good luck. Right? Such a waste of money, right? You could buy a big mansion in Ottawa and Rockwood, right? $5-6 million. So smart decisions, but it's a lavish lifestyle and maybe a waste of money. Or maybe they come up with an idea. Okay, this is how we're going to save your money. Don't worry, we're going to build a gate there to protect against the rising temperature. Now, as engineers, just go out there and right now search the job market and see what's out there for you later on. You will see that all big companies, doesn't matter, any AEC companies, architectural, engineering, construction company, they can be contractors of, I don't know, like airports or residential buildings or offices. They're all freaking out over the fact that we have to limit this rise in temperature. And we need to make sure that we are sustainable. We're achieving our 2030 goals and we're achieving the 2050 goals. The 2050 goal is having net zero buildings, right? Something that's not putting emissions out there. And most countries in the world are already committed, so they have to do it. Right? Unless they want to like say, okay, we're no longer part, we couldn't do it. But that will technically endanger us. If you go out there and you search the current job market, all these big firms are employing decarbonization specialists. And what's a decarbonization specialist? It's somebody who can have an education in any of the engineering or architecture or architectural engineering, but knows a way to reduce the carbon. That's why they call it decarbonization, right? And one of the ways that they're trying to do it, it's not just the building that is being built or the operations that the building is going to have, it's this entire cycle that we have here, right? You have the production of the material, you have the product itself, which can be a home. Then you have the use of the home, and then you have the biological degradation or the impact it's going to have on the society, on the nature. This is the life cycle for the rest of it, but it technically comes to destruction and the material that is technically the base of that building and how that material is going to be used, right? And cradle to grave was a topic that they were using. It meant that we're having the material, we're building the building, and then we're demolishing the building. How is the carbon of that going to be? How do we decarbonize the entire process? Is it using local supply chain? Is it using more innovative technology? Is it building modular? What is it? Now, there's a new idea that says C2C or cradle to cradle. It means when the life of that building is over, or life of whatever product that you are is over, how are we going to reuse it in the circle again? How is it going to be the production or the raw material for another industry, right? And that's what C2C is coming to. We'll learn more about this. This is one of the lectures at the very end of the course, right? And this is technically one of the trending topics right now. We'll learn more about this later on. but this is technically what the idea of LCA or life cycle assessment is. Any questions? It's technically one of the most important things you're going to learn. Perfect. Life cycle analysis. Which one is more sustainable? Those who say the disposable cup, raise your hand. Those who say the mug is more sustainable, raise your hand. Perfect. And does anybody want to say why the mug is more sustainable? Yes. Knock on the table. Because we can use it multiple times. If you right now you go to Carlton's gym and you exercise there, you enter the gym and at the very end there's a water fountain. There's a number on it. It says how many cups or how many things were saved by you using your own bottle. And that number is significant. If you go to Canal Building, 3rd floor, there is the same water fountain that has a number on it. It says how you're contributing to the sustainability of our environment. This is the life cycle assessment for the building. You have the raw material extraction, manufacturing, transportation, and distribution, use of it, and disposal or recycling of it. Right? That's how the LCA works. It looks frightening, but you're not doing anything about it right now. So it's not frightening actually. This is the process of building circular. What is building circular? It means that it goes in a circle. Extract the material, use the material, you put it into another circuit for another process. Right? Does it make sense to everybody? That's building circular or circular economy. I don't know what they call it circular economy because they wanted to put the broader concept there. But for us, circular economy, when it comes to buildings, it's just using reusing the material as something else. What they call circular economy, and it's big. A firm alone in Toronto was able to save about like $4 or $5 million for a startup on circular economy or building circular, right? So the things that we're dealing here with are huge ideas that we can later on utilize. But this is technically the process. As you can see, there's a production stage, construction stage, usage stage, end of life, and other supplementary information, which is technically recycling or sending it to another cycle. That's the LCA. Now, here comes an interesting question for you. Lettuce from California or lettuce from Ottawa? Which one do you like more? Because we're going grocery shopping. But we could. But it's not the plan. Which one do you think is more sustainable? And to that, how does everybody feel? How tired are you? On a scale of 1 to 10, how tired are you? Is it 6? Is it 2? Is it 0? 7 or 8? Do you feel you're ready to do a group project together? Yeah, you're cool for that? Okay, so that's perfect. Sorry, I asked you the question, you raised your hands, but I didn't come to you. The reason is you're doing it in a group project, right? I want you to log into Brightspace, go to week 1. On week 1, there's an article that I uploaded, right? It's an article from, I forgot the guy's name, but it's I think Stanford or something. So please form big groups, like groups of 5 or 6, so that we can do it quickly, so that you guys don't feel too tired. And then go through the life cycle assessment first. Go through the life cycle assessment. Come up with your guesses. After you come up with the guesses, try to quickly in your group read that article quickly. You don't need the details, just get an idea of it. And then compare the conclusion of that article to what you guess in your groups. 10 minutes is enough because you're doing it in a group. 2 of you are supposed to read the article and the rest of you are supposed to work on the project, right? And then you share together. Those 2 who are reading, share and get an idea and then just get a feedback from your friends and see what's happening. Does it sound good? Is it clear? Is everybody having access to Brightspace? What's that? No, not the poster, guys. There is a research article posted that has the answer. Yeah, there's a big one. Yeah. Sorry, I'm doing my poster. Yeah, it's technically posted online. It's a poster. It's an article, but it's like a poster for a conference. So that has the answer. If you read the poster, read the answer, and the rest of you work on guessing that and get the feedback of the friends who are reading articles on that poster. No. Guys, listen again. This is the first thing you're going to do. Part of your group is going to guess what the steps or the cycles are. The other part of the group is going to read the articles. And then you're giving each other feedback. This is what we thought. What do you think? This is what the article says. What do you think? And you have about 10 minutes for this. Speak quick. Guys, from the poster, you mostly need to read the results and conclusion. You don't need to read the whole thing, and you can finish the chapter, you can read the whole thing. No, this is just you guess it. What do you think that's right? Oh, so exactly. Guys, for the poster, you're just guessing the two to each other, right? So if you have this and you're guessing this, in step one where it says raw resource extraction, do you think California is higher or do you think Ottawa is higher? Oh. Sorry if it was not clear, I'm so sorry. There you go, that's you're comparing the two. It's just 11. Yeah, it's just 11 because that article.
Is it, are we trying to compare which one's more audio intensive or being carbon?
Comparing them in terms of carbon.
This would.
Yeah.
I don't see that. Yeah.
Guys, how much 2 more minutes?
Yeah.
Well, like here,
Okay. Yeah. No, it's a starts fire. Yeah. But in fact, so we like this is that is
Guys, it's 8:10 for the sake of time, we gotta move on. Do your field teams, do your teams feel that they are ready? Or you need one more minute? One more minute? You're 1 more minute, guys, try to wrap it up.
It's better than
This one is like.
Yeah.
Technically, the 1 minute is over. Guess you are ready, so we're going to limit it per one fun guess fact we made and one fun fact that you found on the page. Does that make sense? I mean, fun is just to make it fun, but it's actually seriously business we're doing here. But are you ready? Who's going to go first? What's that? I said, who's ready to go first?
For that, like, what was the question you were asking?
Oh, the question was like, the fun was just to make it fun, but it's actually serious business we're doing here.
What do you want us to say?
Or, yeah.
Oh, 2 sentences before. Sorry, let me think. It was one of the guesses that you made and one of the fun facts that you found from the article. Okay, go ahead.
So a guess that we made was that manufacturing, like it would be more carbon emissions for California, just because apparently they have to like mine their water, like Lillian was telling us. In like 2012, like so it's just a lot of resource goes into water extraction for lettuce. And then an interesting thing we learned was that basically it's better for carbon emissions to import in the winter and then to get it locally in the summer, because greenhouses have higher gas emissions than transportation. So in the winter, it would make more sense to transport, but in the summer, it would make more sense to grow it.
You knock on the table. Pick the next group. Guys, if the conclusion is fully said by that group, just say one of your guesses and what you found was interesting. Okay, there you go.
The next group?
Yep.
Yes, one, two.
There's no question. You picked them very cold-heartedly. You're like, you go. Right, there's no question. Okay.
greenhouse. Yeah, that is this, yeah, but I guess that Ottawa was higher, no, I guess California was higher.
She feels that California was higher in like manufacturing, like it's the same. Danica, you said,
It's fine, whoever said it, it's just, you're talking on behalf of the group.
so California, you think that California has the bigger manufacturing, but like if you compare with emission wise. The greenhouse, because on the research paper, they said that, they analyzed 5 greenhouse and like 5 pairs of greenhouse and open field, and they demonstrated that the greenhouse productions tend to emit, almost 3 times more GHG than field system, because we have to have the energy required to keep like required to maintain the ideal growing condition in the greenhouse for the plants, because growing like lettuce in a greenhouse is different than growing in a field, because they all have the natural resources, vitamins, minerals, while in greenhouse you have to like add that.
I'll call on the table. Pick the next group. Guys, one quick guess, one quick fun fact. Or something that you found interesting. You don't need to explain. Or we can skip if you want to skip.
And the domestic open field, but then really big.
Knock on the table. Pick the next people. Knock on the table. Next group. Next group, Greg.
Actually, our next was that distribution in Southern California. But in fact, last summer in Ottawa or Quebec, they distributed more, the most amount of rice.
Pick the next group. Guys, pick the next group. All right.
So our guess was that for distribution, Ottawa was on top of California. And according to ChatGPT, Canada has the largest concentration of greenhouses in North America, so that's a fun fact for today.
Fun fact, but don't trust ChatGPT. There you go. Good enough. Right, the pick you.
I mean, we guessed for, again, distribution, we guessed that California would be, like higher emissions, just because I assume that the state's probably imports and exports more stuff than Canada, just an educated guess, not educated. But I couldn't find really any information on distribution centers in California. I just kind of found stuff on distribution centers in Boston, so might be wrong.
Up on the table. It's actually part of the engineering process. Sometimes you don't find the data and you go write a bigger contract with the data providers and just keep the data, right? That's part of the engineering process. Next week.
I guess California had more processing and packaging factories, I guess, in Ottawa and.
Oh, you can skip, there's no problem.
Yeah.
There's no harm. Okay, we can skip that now. Okay, so it's a contract. Knock on the table. Thanks for.
So we assume or we guess that California would produce more CO2 in production than Canada. And when we compare domestic open field to imported open field, California did produce more CO2. And fun fact that we found is for domestic open field, 85% of the emissions are used for agricultural.
Knock on the table.
And we get that, domestic contribution, they better, was it easier? But let us kind of in that, reason. We also, the fact is that River Lands has a higher carbon footprint than our shore staff are
Right, something before I forget, is there somebody who says, something before I forget, I could include a ChatGPT statement in the course outline to say whether you can use it or not. I didn't, right? Because let's be honest, you're going to use it anyways, right? And everybody is using it. It's a big life. Like it's even those governments, like those high officials, some of them are using it, believe me, right? So the TAs are not going to grade you based on the quality or your grammar, the quality, of course, but not the grammar of your assignments that you submit, right? I'm going to make it very direct. Do not use ChatGPT because there is a lot of problems with it. And it all sounds fake. Right now, if you go to one of those people who are like a little bit smart and up to date, they can just quickly understand, okay, this is written by ChatGPT, right? Please don't write the reports or any assignment with ChatGPT. I like to see your typos. I like to see your grammatical mistakes or anything. Use ChatGPT consciously. If you want to find, for example, a fine fact, use it, but then cross-reference it with scientific data, right? If you want to submit an assignment, for God's sake, do not go to ChatGPT because it is like not a good idea. And I demonstrated in one of the statistical classes that I was a TA for. Mike gives you the right answer, which I right now remember the answer. The actual answer for that question was 18. What ChatGPT was providing was 18.2 for no reason. To do the calculation by hand, it's not 18.2, right? It's 18. Why are you providing 18.2? So do not use it. Even the paid version is not good enough. So don't go that route. Use it consciously if you want to, but always cross-reference it with scientific facts, right? I didn't include it in the course outline so that you guys have a little bit of room, but please do not use it for the submission. I like to see your typos. But anyways, those are the fun facts about lettuce. Cool thing we thought about it. We should do cherries one day because I like cherries. But anyways, for now, you already did this. Now let's talk about cars a little bit, right? We have supercars, super nice cars there. We have Tesla, we have BMW, we have a Mitsubishi. You can see their emissions, right? There's a life cycle emissions per kilometer. There's a life cycle emissions total. There's an end of life emissions, and there's use emissions. There's production emissions, right? And if you compare the numbers, they're very interesting. Compare the BMW, which is considered kind of a luxury, and then compare it to the Tesla for the life cycle emissions per kilometer that they travel, right? And then look at the use emissions, right? The numbers are very different. But to make this final assumption, you need to consider all the previous steps. What's the end of life? What's it for the battery? What's it for the use? What's everything? It's not just using the electricity for the operation, right? There's also production. There's also end of life, right? That's why it's important. That's why LCA or life cycle assessment is important. So, Hummer EV, brand new one. It can do crap driving for you. You can just turn the lights and just do a nice parallel parking without too much effort. Is it sustainable or not? What do you think? Those who say Hummer EV is sustainable, raise your hand. Those who say Hummer EV is not sustainable, raise your hand. I like the idea. You can refer to the article at the bottom later on. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's Green Car Reports. It's actually, sorry, yes.
Are you gonna be posting these slides after?
Yeah, I'm posting the slides. Off-roadable, but is it sustainable? Not really. It's a cool car. It's not as sustainable as we thought, right? It's still an EV, but because of all that production or all that life cycle assessment, it's not as sustainable as we thought. Energy use by sector. Now let's talk about Canada a little bit, right? We as engineers, we rely on data, and then we want to see how we are performing. We rely on those data. The Canadian agencies, different agencies, including Statistics Canada, collect all this information and how energy use is being used by the different sectors: residential, transportation, commercial, industrial. And building energy use is always about 1/3 of the entire energy use in the developed world, right? And that is crazy. Same with almost the GHGs, right? The source of emissions are important. Earlier, I told you homes in Quebec use electricity-based heating, and electricity emissions is very low in Quebec. So homes in Quebec are essentially putting less emissions out there. Versus Ontario homes, they are relying on natural gas, and there is a lot of emissions associated with natural gas. As you can see, when you compare the both directly, and remember, natural gas is normally reported by M3, and what we just converted to kilowatt per hour, to kilowatt hour to make it easier. to compare the two. 1.7 versus 1.182. That's crazy, right? Ontario versus Quebec. GHG emissions for different sectors and what they are and what's being used. These are just some fun data that I'm showing to you. There's nothing for you to memorize on this slide. These are just to see how energy use and emissions are reported, right? These are not going to be part of the exam, or you're not going to be asked questions about this because you're the best engineers in the world right now. Go online and just look them up, right? Nobody is memorizing these things because they change every year, even every hour, because sometimes the cleanness of electricity grid really depends on the time of use. These are the sectors for Canada. Again, the same reports from energy use in Canada. You can see a lot of resources there, and they are all super cool. Ontario emissions by different sectors: industry, buildings, transportation. You see building, industry, transportation, right? They're like always big. The final, almost final takeaway is that the natural environment impacts us and we impact the natural environment, and we are having an interaction. Right? That's the main takeaway. I'm going to skip the examples because we really talk about the cities that we were having. But a quick catch up on that is the temperature, the wind, the rain, solar radiation, outdoor contaminants. They are all impacting us. The noise and vibration, right? They all impact our environment. And it's always a two-way interaction. It impacts us, it influences us, and we influence the nature as well, right? Something interesting, when they built this building, it's one of those interactions, it worked like a magnifier, right? On the building surrounding it because of the shape that it had. It's one of the things that artists say, oh, this is super cool to build it, and then they build it, they come up with the problems, right? This is another idea that I can quickly show to you, but I don't know how. Do you want to watch a video, yes or no? Yeah? Okay. So this is the video of Vortex Corner. And technically what Vortex Corner is that next to the tall buildings, there's a vortex happening, right? There is a vacuum that the wind is going there faster. It happens on your cars as well. If you just look at the aerodynamics of the cars, you'll see. From BBC, but why can't we?
When you have two buildings, okay, beside each other.
Sorry about that.
I'm sure you felt it, those strong gusts of wind when you're walking through the city, especially in the downtown core. But what's happening here on the ground doesn't have so much to do with Mother Nature as it does with skyscrapers.
I'm Kaitan Abusosha. I'm an assistant professor at Harrison University, and I'm studying wind engineering for more than 10 years.
There's so many wind tunnels in front of us, that's not what they're called.
Okay, so that's a misconception. Sorry to know what you said is the downward, the vortex, again, like the corner vortex or the funneling. Let's say in this way, it will hit the upper part of the building and then be diverted downward.
Once a building stops wind in its path, the wind slides down the facade, hitting the ground and causing a vortex.
Normally, channel effect when you have two buildings, okay, beside each other facing the wind. And what happened is the gap between the wind, like the two buildings, the wind speeds up in there.
Then there's the corner vortex, when wind accelerates around a sharp corner, and Toronto has a lot of square towers. Skyscrapers have been going up for the last 100 years. Conditions got so bad in the 80s that climbing ropes were installed along Front Street to prevent people from being blown away. Thankfully, in the last 20 years, we've come up with better solutions.
So this is the wind tunnel at the subsonic wind tunnel at Rice University. And here you can actually test buildings or bridges at different scales.
Sensors are used to see how wind interacts with buildings at different heights. Engineers then use that information to make changes to a building's design. Adding a podium to the bottom of a building, for instance, stops those gusts of wind that are caused by a downwash.
There is a wind that's going downward, parallel to the face of the building. If you have something that's sticking out, it will be divergent.
Another solution? Hedges.
When these trees grow, okay, it will absorb the wind. Behind that wall or hedge, it will be in a way that's going to be like a gentle breeze.
With more cities going vertical, there needs to be better planning for how building up affects life on the street. A full pedestrian wind analysis takes about a week or two. Problem is, when another building goes up, that could change the reading.
It's coming this way, again, back and forth, but,
So developers and cities need to be willing to make adjustments, and quick. In a city like Toronto, there are nearly 400 new buildings proposed.
All right, that's the fun fact. One of the fun facts for tonight. That's a real thing, and you'll definitely experience it when you are standing next to the tall buildings, or you might have already experienced it. This is about building resiliency that I talked about. It's one of those.
It's one of the most important factors that architects and engineers must consider when designing tall buildings.
Just to add to the fact that this is one of the most important, also one of the luxury sources of income for engineers, because wind tunnels are very experimental, and sometimes those big firms need to sign contracts with those people who have those wind tunnels to analyze the building for them, and sometimes they're millions of dollars, right? Building resiliency, it's one of those topics that we talked about. It's about considering the temporal effect we are going to experience, especially with the global warming. The climate of these two is going to be similar by 2080. So interesting, right? You're building something today, but if the life is more than 100 years, then you're going to be dealing with that. You have to air condition that places maybe more, or maybe you need AC more than the heating ones, right? Number of the very hot days per year, we have something known as heating degree days. So these are a little bit interesting. That's going to be 4 times what this slide is saying, is that when the climate change happens, we are going to have 400% more, 300% more number of days that the daily temperature is more than 30 degrees. In those places that are warm. And what does that mean? People are going to use more AC. What if the AC source of fuel is not clean? Then you're going to have more emissions. You see how the chain is happening there? Do you see how the reaction is going in there? So that is something crazy. And this is the prevalence of air conditioners. And you can see how these are interesting. The central air conditioners are just on the rise. Right? We're becoming more technology dependent because our cities are getting warmer. Those are some more fun facts and fun data for the global that you can see. And this is about building resiliency, right? And resiliency doesn't just mean that, okay, we consider the climate change cool, but sometimes you can have thunderstorms that brings down the trees, and the trees fall under electricity grids, right? And they are no longer operational. When they're not operational, your home cannot be warmed up because your furnace, although it works with the natural gas, it still needs electricity to be turned on. That runs out, and guess what? You stay in that situation for 2 weeks, your entire pipes are going to be frozen, right? We're very technology dependent, we're energy dependent, and these are all important. And when we consider resiliency, these are all important factors that we need to consider. Night sky, we are almost coming to an end. We're almost done. The next few ones are just some general topics. Night sky, what do you think we did to night sky? Did anybody go out to see the aurora that happened in Ottawa just a few months ago? Nobody? The Northern Lights? They were beautiful. I went out and the starry sky was beautiful. But what do you think we did to the night sky?
If you're in a city, light pollution makes it harder for you to see the stars, so like, if you wanted to go see the lights, you had to drive a little bit out of the city.
Yep, knock on the table. Light pollution. That's what we did to our cities. We cannot see it anymore, right? Now, we're just wrapping it up. What you will learn through the course, we're going to learn when you're doing analysis and engineers, you need to consider the temporal impacts and spatial impacts, the building impact and the time impact. We're going to learn about humans and how humans are going to behave. We technically call it, based on our terminology, occupant behavior, right? We're going to think about the system thinking, how the whole thing is going to work together, right? How is this going to impact the other one? How is the other one going to impact the other one? One of the interesting things that they did was that they were repairing the parliament. They decided to use concrete. Concrete didn't work very well with the stone that they had there, and it was just, oh, this is a mess. And another company kicked in and they were like, okay, we're taking care of it, don't worry, guys. They took all the concrete out and they're using a new material, right? We're going to learn about the first principles in engineering. We are also going to learn about estimation. If you don't know what estimation is in simple terms is that you can estimate how many bricks you're going to need for this building, or how much money you need to build the project, or how much money you're going to spend during the operation phase of a project. We're going to think about the data visualization. This data visualization was done by me and in MATLAB, and this is technically an easy to understand visualization of very complicated data for industry, right? So you're going to learn that as well. Something about Brightest Space, guys, try to check it regularly. I'll send you emails when there's an update. The current update is that I had to bring back the final exam to 50%. The individual assignments are 30%, and the final project is 20%, right? And for the final project, we're going to do the groups of 3. Syllabus and the schedule were posted. Regarding the schedule, every other week you're going to have a tutorial, and the TAs are going to be there. Check the schedule. I just updated the schedule. The dates and everything is similar, but there's just one tutorial added, making it every other week. If I fall behind, just in case, we're going to postpone the assignments, but they're never going to be earlier, right? I'll try not to keep you to the very last minute, especially later in the winter or in the fall that we're here, and it's getting slow. Sorry about today, but we had a lot of group projects and we had to do them. But I will try to end the class a little bit earlier so that you can easily go back home. Any questions so far? Everybody was clear on broadcast, so I am going to come up with more information on that when I have it, and I'm going to assign you to groups, but I will let you know first, get to know each other a little bit more so that you know who you're going to work with, and then you pick your own teammates, right? Does it make sense? Is it clear to everybody? Okay, if you have no question, thank you so much. Have a great night and enjoy your rest of the night. You know the lights on? I can see them. I just by London. I just got here. I actually got a picture of me pretty soon. Did you actually see the lights? Yeah. The only thing that I saw was a black guy. Thank you very much. Yeah. It was like beautiful. I have it on my phone too. It's easy to answer. It's a full Aurora thing that I got. But here I saw was just like the white spots. You can see the actual light. No, it's actually purple. Here's the purple. Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah. That's a hard question. I've been teaching in those things for 18, and then I was teaching people how to drive the things
So you're at
Great university.
Cool. For university, it has been.
It's very nice to make people engaged in the class and like writing some
Yeah. So happy you like it. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Thank you. You guys are very nice. How's the research going? No? Okay.
I'm so tired because of it. I don't know if you know Ruth.
No.
Yeah. I'm handing over my study to her.
Oh, yeah.
Because Dr. Bryan wants her to write the paper just to gonna be faster and out of school. So I'm trying to finish up like all my data analysis and all of it. England. England. No, she's in England.
Oh, she's going to do results?
Yeah. Like I have to write up all my notes for like the methodology results. Half of it is done already and finish up data analysis and stuff. So that's what I've been working on all week.
4
I
days?
hope it goes nice. Sometimes you can go to the fourth floor of the library. That's what I did when I was on campus, like just exiting the floor. Refresh from the nice. music.
Yeah, but like that's why today, and these past 3 days, I've just been dead, trying to get this done. It's like managing 8 courses. right
Okay,
now.
okay.
Other than that, pretty good. Obviously, we learn like mostly.
Yeah, I just submit a physical release.
Right.
You get back to
breeze.
Oh, I'll be down.
That's true. You can lie.
I'm pretty sure we're very involved in other things like here.
Turn like crazy.
Right, yeah.
I still have to do that. The thesis part is done.
Yeah.
But the research part and the
I was
writing
stressing
part
because
is.
I thought it was that long.
Okay,
But if you don't owe the government anything.
Right.
then-
I'm actually surprised to see your name on the instructor. I think they're appointed. instructor.
What? I don't know.
That's pretty cool.
But you don't.
Quick question though about the laptop.
Yeah.
How's your math?
I don't like it, to be honest, but probably going to be fine for another like.
Okay. I might go back to Toronto tomorrow.
Portion of them
until
is federal
Sunday.
and a portion of them is provincial.
But that might
right?
not happen.
You only have to, no,
Would you
there's
appreciate
only
the
interest
laptop
on the
tomorrow?
provincial part.
Are you coming back?
No, I'm on Sunday, yeah.
So you got-
Yeah.
But then I might go again next weekend. I'm not sure. That's personal possibility.
So just try to transfer the laptop.
Yeah,
You
for
don't
sure.
charge
So if
yourself.
you need
You're
it
gonna
next
have to pay
week,
back
then I'll be
eventually.
here
But
like
what you
Monday,
should
or I
do
can give it to you like
Call your
tomorrow
OSAP
morning
provider.
too. If
Be
that
like, yo,
works for you.
I wanna put my money into the provincial.
Tomorrow morning. Okay.
That way.
You have my
you
last
keep
number.
it.
As long as you don't need.
Yeah, I should be fine. I just need to create another user on it.
Sounds great.
Yeah, so-
Warranty is
Pay
not
them
still
back then.
renewed.
Don't pay them now.
Yeah, I don't actually think we have.
You pay them now, like they're gonna give you like.
I'll need to create another user.
Thanks,
Thank you, Professor, thank you.
But yeah, just email.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a great night.
You too.